Let me tell you what this story is actually about, because almost every headline you've seen in the past 2 weeks has described it as a tiara dispute, or a jewelry row, or a behind-the-scenes clash at a wedding. And while all of those things are technically accurate, they completely miss the point of what's actually happening. This is not about a tiara. This was never about a tiara. The tiara is a symbol, and in the British royal family, symbols are not decoration. They are the language through which power is communicated, contested, and sometimes taken away. What we have been watching over the past 6 months is a slow, methodical, entirely deniable argument about one fundamental question: who is actually running this institution right now? And Camilla's answer to that question and William's answer to that question are apparently so different that they have now produced 2 separate flashpoints in 6 months, with the same woman caught in the middle of both of them. Start with December 3, 2025. State banquet at Windsor Castle, held in honor of German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier on his first state visit to the UK in 27 years. Every piece of that evening was choreographed months in advance: the guest list, the seating, the speeches, the music, the diplomatic symbolism of welcoming Germany's head of state with the full weight of British royal ceremony. And then Kate walked in, and everything else in the room apparently became secondary. She wore the Oriental circlet tiara. Originally commissioned by Prince Albert for Queen Victoria in 1853, set with 2,600 diamonds and rubies. The rubies added later by Queen Alexandra, who considered the original opals unlucky. It is one of the largest and most visually commanding pieces in the royal collection. Kate had never worn it publicly before. She paired it with a full-length sequin cape gown by Jenny Packham, earrings from Queen Elizabeth's personal collection, the Royal Family Order, and the Royal Victorian Order sash. The look was extraordinary. Royal commentators reached for words like radiant and historic. Fox News quoted a British royals expert who described the ensemble as a brilliant historical nod to the German guests and a signal of a new era. President Trump, who had attended a state banquet at the same venue 3 months earlier, had already publicly praised Kate as so radiant, so healthy, so beautiful. The world, quite literally, could not take its eyes off her. Camilla was in the room. According to an insider cited by Radar Online and subsequently reported across multiple outlets, she was furious. Not quietly uncomfortable, furious. The source told the outlet, Camilla was reportedly furious that Kate wore the enormous tiara at the banquet. She viewed it as yet another obvious move by Kate to steal the spotlight. The same insider added, Kate and William are positioning themselves with a lot of authority, almost as if Buckingham Palace were theirs. Camilla considers this unacceptable and hasn't hesitated to express her frustration to courtiers and senior royals. A second palace source went further. Camilla can see from how Kate and William have managed Andrew, Sarah, and the Sussexes that they are highly strategic. She's been cautioned against provoking them. Despite that caution, and this detail matters, she kept going. Now understand the context of that December evening. Kate had returned to full public duties earlier in 2025 after her cancer diagnosis and treatment in 2024. Her comeback had been cautious at first, then increasingly confident. By December, she was appearing at multiple high-profile engagements in a single week, taking on responsibilities that had previously been distributed more evenly among senior royals. A second palace source went further. Camilla can see from how Kate and William have managed Andrew, Sarah, and the Sussexes that they are highly strategic. She's been cautioned against provoking them. Despite that caution, and this detail matters, she kept going. Now understand the context of that December evening. Kate had returned to full public duties earlier in 2025 after her cancer diagnosis and treatment in 2024. Her comeback had been cautious at first, then increasingly confident. By December, she was appearing at multiple high-profile engagements in a single week, taking on responsibilities that had previously been distributed more evenly among senior royals. Palace aides, according to reporting from Radar Online, confirmed that King Charles had been increasingly delegating duties to Kate and William as his own treatment continued. That context is everything. Camilla wasn't just watching Kate wear a large tiara, she was watching Kate wear a large tiara at an event that Camilla would normally have dominated as queen consort, looking more like the future of the monarchy than anyone else in the room, in a week when it was increasingly clear that the future had already started arriving. That was December. File it. Now jump forward exactly 6 months, to June 6, 2026, and a family wedding in the Cotswolds. Peter Phillips, Princess Anne's son, the king's nephew, the eldest grandchild of the late Queen Elizabeth II, married NHS nurse Harriet Spurling at All Saints' Church in Kemble, Gloucestershire. The reception was held at Gatcombe Park, Anne's own estate, which was also Peter's childhood home. It was an intimate occasion by royal standards, private, personal, genuinely warm. Peter had proposed to Harriet in August 2025 after meeting her in May 2024. They had a blended family, Peter's 2 daughters from his first marriage, Savannah and Isla, and Harriet's daughter, Georgina. Harriet is an NHS nurse with no aristocratic background and no royal title. Peter himself carries no title, a deliberate choice made by Princess Anne at his birth to give her children more private lives. Before the wedding, a question circulated that royal watchers found irresistible. Would Harriet wear a tiara? The precedent was there. Peter's first wife, Autumn Kelly, had worn Princess Anne's festoon tiara at their 2008 Windsor wedding. Experts pointed out that within royal circles, tiara wearing at weddings is more about family inclusion and occasion dressing than formal rank. Princess Anne reportedly had several options she could have loaned, including the pine flower aquamarine tiara given to her on her own wedding day in 1973, and the meander tiara, described by one expert as having a clean architectural silhouette that would suit an understated occasion. On the day itself, Harriet arrived looking stunning in an Amelia Wickstead gown and wearing a tiara, a sparkling diamond piece from Pragnell, the same family jewelers who had designed her engagement ring. That choice, Pragnell, not the royal collection, was, according to reporting from IB Times UK, not the original plan. And the story of why it changed is where this gets genuinely interesting. According to an insider quoted by Closer magazine, William had wanted Harriet to have access to the royal jewelry collection. He felt she should at least have the option of choosing a royal piece. He believed, according to the source, that as Peter's close cousin and someone with a real personal bond to the groom, it was within his rights to facilitate that access. Camilla apparently disagreed. Her office allegedly moved to block Harriet's access to the royal vault, and the reason cited, according to the same reporting, was that Harriet did not come from an aristocratic background. Princess Anne, reported to have been frustrated by the situation, reportedly turned to William for assistance. William intervened. The argument that followed apparently left relations between him and Camilla at what sources described as an all-time low. In the end, Harriet wore the Pragnell tiara, which one royal jewelry expert described as her way of walking around an argument that had already left relations between William and Camilla at an all-time low. It was a graceful solution to an ungraceful situation. But the argument didn't end because the tiara question was resolved. It escalated. Because according to IB Times UK's reporting from June 18th, the most pointed thing to emerge from the whole episode was not the dispute about jewelry access at all. It was what Camilla allegedly said about William himself. She reportedly accused him of acting as though he already has the final say on everything, and of treating King Charles's reign as merely a formality to be endured before he takes over. That is a serious charge, not emotionally, dynastically. In a hereditary monarchy, the distinction between a king and his heir is not ceremonial. It is constitutional. The heir is meant to be visible, prepared, even influential. He is not meant to look as though he is impatiently waiting for his father to get out of the way. Camilla's accusation, if accurately reported, is essentially saying that William has stopped behaving like an heir and started behaving like a king, making decisions, asserting control over the family's assets, and treating any pushback as a challenge to authority he already considers his own. William's camp pushes back hard on this framing. According to the same IB Times UK reporting, those close to him say he would deny that he's in any rush to rule and that he feels it's his duty to make sure things are running smoothly, and that means asserting himself when needed and voicing his opinions. The argument from his side is not about impatience, it is about responsibility. As the heir to the throne, who has controlled the Duchy of Cornwall, a £1.2 billion estate generating approximately £30 million annually since inheriting it after Queen Elizabeth's death in 2022, William believes he has not only the right but also the responsibility to lead and to correct mistakes where he sees them. In that framing, standing up for his cousin's bride is not a power grab. It is exactly what a future king is supposed to do. But here is what makes Camilla's position more than just injured feelings about a piece of jewelry. She has been watching this pattern build for 3 years. It was William who removed Annabel Elliot, Camilla's own sister, who had worked across duchy properties under Charles for nearly 2 decades, from the duchy payroll when he took control in 2022. It was William who replaced her with people from his own trusted personal circle, people whose loyalty runs to him and to Kate, not to the current reign. It was William who, according to multiple sources, handled Andrew's situation, Sarah Ferguson's situation, and the Sussex situation with what insiders describe as cold strategic efficiency. Brutal, in the word one palace source used, and deliberately so. Camilla has watched all of this from a very specific vantage point. She is 77 years old. She has been in the orbit of this family since the early 1970s. She watched Diana navigate the institution and ultimately be broken by it. She watched Charles spend decades as an heir whose influence was constrained and whose personal life was turned into a global spectacle. She has spent her entire adult life inside a system she understands at a granular level. And what she is watching now, through the lens of 6 months of tiara incidents and payroll changes and her sister's removal and William's increasingly visible institutional authority, is a generational transfer of power that she did not consent to and cannot stop. The word that keeps appearing in her reported complaints is unacceptable. The tiara situation at the December banquet, unacceptable. The intervention at Peter Philip's wedding, unacceptable. William treating Charles's reign as a formality, unacceptable. But here is the question worth sitting with. What exactly can she do about it? She cannot overrule William's decisions at the duchy. That is his domain, legally and constitutionally. She cannot prevent Kate from wearing the largest tiara in the collection to a state banquet. She cannot compel William to restore Annabel Elliot to a payroll he controls. Every channel through which she might normally exercise influence runs ultimately through Charles, and Charles, by every account, does not have the energy for this fight. Sources have described him as understanding why William and Anne feel the way they feel, and finding himself unable to argue against it with genuine conviction. The man who would need to protect Camilla from what is happening is the same man who set the conditions for it by handing William the duchy, by giving William and Kate the authority to issue royal warrants, by restructuring the working royal framework in ways that have progressively concentrated power in the generation that comes after him. There is one more detail from the Peter Philip's wedding that rounds this picture out, and it comes not from inside the church, but from outside it. As the family gathered in Gloucestershire that Saturday, 2 people walked the full distance to All Saints' Church on foot, rather than arriving by car like the other guests: Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie. Their father, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, had been arrested less than 4 months earlier, stripped of his titles, evicted from his home, and left facing an open police investigation. The family's collective back was as firmly turned toward him as it had ever been, and his daughters walked.
No statement, no explanation. Just a choice about how they would arrive at a church on a morning when every choice inside that family communicates something. William reportedly noticed. The atmosphere at that wedding, according to insiders, was described as awkward, even as everyone remained professionally civil throughout the ceremony. 6 months, 2 incidents, 1 recurring argument. In December, Camilla's frustration was about a tiara Kate chose to wear. In June, it was about a tiara Harriet couldn't access, and an accusation that cut to the heart of how this family is being run. The subject matter sounds trivial. The underlying question is anything but. While Charles is still king, still reigning, still the only person with the constitutional authority to actually adjudicate between his wife and his heir, that question sits unresolved. Every month that passes without resolution is another month in which William makes more decisions, asserts more authority, and builds more of the institutional architecture that will define his reign before it even officially begins. Camilla can call it unacceptable. She can tell courtiers that William is acting like he's already king. She can be headstrong and thick-skinned, as people close to her insist she is. None of that changes what the duchy accounts say, or who signs the warrants, or whose circle of people now fills the roles that used to be filled by hers. The tiara at Peter Philip's wedding is back in the royal collection. The one Kate wore in December is too. But the argument they triggered is still very much out of its case. And the next time it surfaces, and it will surface because the conditions that produced it haven't changed, it probably won't be about jewelry at all.